We have new information that may indicate we have less of a mystery in this case of the three dead men in Kansas City. Jordan Willis, the man who lived in that home, whose story has kind of been, let's say, inconsistent, he has now checked himself into rehab. So that fuels an assumption, even without the toxicology, that drugs played some role in what happened here. There's another survivor who was also there that night who has a past that is also instructive of drugs being part of this behavior. And that doesn't make the loss any less painful. It doesn't make the loss any less tragic that these young men with families are here no more, no matter what their choices were. Also today, after weeks of silence, the police finally met with the families of the deceased. What did they tell them? Let's bring in Fox 4 KC reporter Malik Johnson. He's been covering the case in Kansas City. Also joined by former FBI agent, NewsNation Law and Justice contributor, Jennifer Coffindaffer. Malik, thank you for coming back. What do you know?
Of course, of course. So we know that these families met with the prosecuting attorney who will be in charge of bringing charges if this case rises to that point today. We know all three families were represented in this meeting. Clayton McGeeney's family, Ricky Johnson's family, and David Harrington's family. We spoke with the attorney representing the Johnson's family after they left this meeting, and they left satisfied, they said. They said finally they feel heard, that after weeks of not being able to get in contact with police, not being able to get in contact with the prosecuting attorney, they finally felt heard. And most importantly, they said that they feel as though that this is being taken seriously. I know that they had been on your show and the families had explained to us how over the last few weeks they felt as though this wasn't being taken seriously, as though this was just being looked at and looked over in a sense. But now they say after today's meeting that they understand why police and prosecutors have moved the way that they have. And quite frankly, they were hopeful. They were optimistic walking out of that courthouse in Platte County today, Chris.
Malik, you've been filling in the facts and details of what we know and what we don't know. The time of death is going to be instructive. Jennifer and I will talk about this. But what have you learned?
Yeah, so this is some new reporting that we actually just got to today, working with our sources to get it all confirmed. But as you say, it is so important because it goes to that timeline. When did this happen? How did this happen? And now we're learning that these three men, at least one of them, presumably all three of them, were up as early as about 2 a.m. Monday morning. So we know that this fifth person left just after midnight, and now we know that these three men were still up at about 2 a.m. Monday morning. So what happened between that 2 a.m. period and that 10 p.m. on Tuesday night period is going to be instructive in figuring out exactly what happened. But we do know now, and I think it's a huge thing, Chris, because the timeline is the most important thing, considering these three men were in the backyard for as long as they were. So how long were they actually there? And every day, we're making inroads on creating a more defined timeline as to when this happened and when they were last heard from before, of course, they went silent.
Jennifer, the idea of the witness, the man who lives in the house, first of all, being allowed to stay in the house. We don't know what they did in terms of looking at his lab equipment. Supposedly he's a chemist, a scientist who works in his house. You know, they didn't make it a crime scene. What does it mean that he is now checked into rehab?
Well, I find that interesting. I mean, certainly, as you point out, now it gives us another indicator that, of course, drugs probably led to these tragic deaths. But I find the timing a little bit interesting in terms of, is this some sort of excuse possibly that will be used to say, listen, I was out of it, even if I was home, even if I was on social media using my phones, even if I did exit it, I didn't see them because I've got a problem and I was messed up that night.
Hey, thank you for watching. Please go to newsnationnow.com, newsnationnow.com, and you can find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button down below. Then you will get more of NewsNation's fact-driven coverage.